What is your path to Dharma?
All right, welcome back to the Path to Dharma podcast.
Summertime.
Summertime.
Wow, we have so much catching up to do. So much catching up to do. So many things have happened. I feel like a whole Mahabharata level of events has occurred since we've made our last video.
Yeah.
Right? Like a whole epic saga has begun. So we in kind of in that vein, we wanted to just start reading again. It's been a minute.
Yeah.
We've had some crazy events happen in life, and we really want to get right back to it. It's the first day
Mm-hmm.
of summer
Mm-hmm.
here where we're at, and welcome back to the Path to Dharma. I am Shannon. This is my beautiful daughter Shay, and we've been reading Srimad Bhagavatam. We are in the third canto, part one. And it's our intent to just read all week. We're just going to post all week and
Yeah.
try to catch up and hopefully finish the third canto. Maybe we will finish it this week. Who knows? We're just going to
Yeah.
read until we stop, right?
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. Absolutely. And just Hare Krishna. I feel
Yeah,
like everything that we read up to thus far is what prepared us for the events that are unfolding now. So I just feel so very grateful for the wisdom of the Srimad Bhagavatam, and I've been missing it because we're kind of dedicated to catching our reaction live and hearing from our beautiful community here. We haven't been reading, but that doesn't mean that we haven't been implementing the wisdom that we have learned thus far. And I think it's really important,
yeah,
especially from our background in these avatars, to take the time to integrate everything that we've learned so far as well. So that's
yeah,
been really nice. And yeah, just having this like deep feeling of like read more, like it's time, we're ready to read more. And so looking forward to it. We're in chapter 6.
yeah.
Um, so Canto 3, Part 1, Chapter 6 is where we're going to pick up today. Before we begin, do you have any other announcements or anything of that sort before I read the obeisances?
Go ahead and read the obeisances. I want to read a little tiny section out of Canto 1 before we start.
Okay.
But otherwise, yeah, go ahead.
So, before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam, and by rendering a service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact.
Yes. Let's go. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Okay. What I wanted to read was just a few verses out of Canto 1. And this is kind of where my mind has been. And really what I want to read is the words of Queen Kunti. Little shout out to Devi's Child right now for bringing this up on our last live that we really didn't post. We had a live a couple weeks ago. Last week? I don't even know.
I think it
Time's
was,
so like
yeah, I don't know.
squished together right now.
I think it
Um,
was last week.
so I just want to read this out of Canto 1, Chapter 8, Text 21. Let me therefore offer my respectful obeisances unto the Lord, who has become the son of Vasudeva, the pleasure of Devaki, the boy of Nanda and the other cowherd men of Vrindavan, and the enlivener of the cows and the senses. My respectful obeisances are unto you, O Lord, whose abdomen is marked with a depression like a lotus flower, who are always decorated with garlands of lotus flowers, and whose glance is as cool as the lotus, and whose feet are engraved with lotuses. O Rishikesh, master of the senses and lord of lords, you have released your mother, Devaki, who was long imprisoned and distressed by the envious King Kamsa, and me and my children from a series of constant dangers. My dear Krishna, your lordship has protected us from a poisoned cave. from a great fire, from cannibals, from the vicious assembly, from sufferings during our exile in the forest, and from the battle where great generals fought. And now you have saved us from the weapon of Ashvatthama. Text 25. I wish that all those calamities would happen again and again, so we could see you again and again. For seeing you means that we will no longer see repeated births and deaths. Ay, Kunti. Again and again, Krishna, again and again. Let me rely on you. Let me put my entire faith and trust in you, Krishna. I have been sort of like surviving in this state of full and complete trust, and it changes you entirely when you get into that. So here I go forward with no expectation of fruit, of action, just moving forward, trusting Krishna with all my heart and soul. So I just wanted to say that before we started reading.
Hare Krishna. Let's do a little recap. I'm not even exactly sure what we read last, to be honest.
Okay, so
I wanted to go and kind of read some before we began, but then, I was messing with my microphone.
Yeah. Okay, so Canto 3 is really talking about
Vidura talks with Maitreya is the last chapter that we read. That's chapter 5.
Right. They're just discussing the creation of the universe, really, and this like the deep knowledge. It's really interesting. Vidura is in here, and it makes me think of when we first started, and we had to even look up who Vidura was.
Yeah.
Remember, we're like, who's Vidura?
Yeah.
And it's crazy that we wouldn't know that because he's like such an epically important character.
Right.
So Vidura is talking with Maitreya, who's a sage, who's a rishi.
Yes.
And they're just breaking down, what is our reality? What is this? Where are we? What are we at? And so chapter 6 picks up at the creation of the universal form. Remember, we've had the whole the manifestation, the gigantic manifestation of Lord Krishna. We've had so many different interesting descriptions of kind of how the universe has been created and is playing out before our eyes. So I think that's it. Anything else you can think of that we really need to sort of catch up? What's going on in this chapter?
I don't think so. I'm just excited to get to reading, honestly.
Yeah.
So let's do it.
Okay, let's do it. Do you want to start or me?
I'll start. So we are in Srimad Bhagavatam, Third Canto, Part 1, Chapter 6, Text 1. The Rishi Maitreya said, the Lord thus heard about the suspension on the progressive creative functions of the universe due to the non-combination of his potencies, such as the Mahatattva.
The Supreme Powerful Lord then simultaneously entered into the 23 elements with the goddess Kali, his external energy, who alone amalgamates all the different elements.
Can you read that one more time?
Wow. Okay, 23. Yeah, and actually I want to slightly go to the purport on this because it explains what 23 things is being referred to. The Supreme Powerful Lord then simultaneously entered into the 23 elements with the goddess Kali, his external energy. It's like the Shakti energy, right? The creation, like the movement, right?
Right.
Who alone amalgamates all the different elements. And the purport says the ingredients of matter are counted as 23. The total material energy, false ego, sound, touch, form, taste, smell, earth, water, fire, air, sky, ear, eye, ear, nose, tongue, skin, hand, leg, evacuating organ, genitals, speech, and mind. All are combined together by the influence of time and are again dissolved in the course of time. Okay, interesting. So basically all the things that make up our physical bodies and the physical universe that we are here having manifested into.
Right.
Okay.
I've heard this. Okay, text 3. Thus, when the personality of Godhead entered into the elements by his energy, all the living entities were enlivened into different activities, just as one is engaged in his work after awaking from sleep.
When the 23 principal elements were set in action by the will of the Supreme, the gigantic universal form, or the Visva-rupa body of the Lord, came into existence. Okay, there was the word that I was looking for, the word that describes the gigantic form.
Yes.
The Virat-rupa, Visva-rupa.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure how to say it correctly, but Visva-rupa.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me just. Okay. The Lord heard about the suspension of the progressive creative functions of the universe due to the non-combinations of his potencies. And from there, he simultaneously entered into the 23 elements with the goddess Kali.
Mhm.
And after entering into the elements, all living entities were enlivened into different activities. It's like he entered and everything woke up.
Yes, right.
He allowed his consciousness to
From
be.
asleep, right. Yes.
Okay. And then when they were set in action, those 23 elements, the gigantic universal form came into existence.
Right, which we read about in Canto 2.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, text 5. As the Lord in his plenary portion entered into the elements of the universal creation, they transformed into the gigantic form in which all the planetary systems and all movable and immovable creations rest. I need to read that again.
Yeah.
As the Lord in his plenary portion entered into the elements of the universal creation, they transformed into the gigantic form in which all the planetary systems and all movable and immovable creations rest. Okay.
Okay. As the Lord, okay, so no, I was just repeating. The gigantic Virat-rupa, known as Hiranmaya, lived for 1,000 celestial years on the water of the universe, and all the living entities lay with him. So that's like that cosmic ocean. And I feel like I'm picturing that picture of Vishnu like lounging in the cosmic ocean.
Yeah.
Kind of that's like the picture in my mind I have.
Yeah. Text 7. The total energy of the Mahat Tattva in the form of the gigantic Virat-rupa divided himself by himself into the consciousness of the living entities, the life of activity and self-identification, which are subdivided into 1, 10, and 3, respectively. I'm not quite sure what that means.
Yeah, I don't either. I don't know either. Let's just keep going.
Okay.
The gigantic universal form of the Supreme Lord is the first incarnation and plenary portion of the Supersoul. He is the self of an unlimited number of living entities, and in him rests the aggregate creation, which thus flourishes. So that's where it's like we're all one. We're all actually one. We are all actually coming from the same source.
He is the
He's the
self
source
of the unlimited number of living entities.
Okay.
The gigantic universal form is represented by 3, 10, and 1 in the sense that he is the body and the mind and the senses. He is the dynamic force of all movements by 10 kinds of life energy, and he is the one heart where life energy is generated.
Okay, that's the 1, 3, and 10. The Supreme Lord is the super soul of all the demigods entrusted with the task of constructing the cosmic manifestation. Thus, being prayed to, he thought to himself and thus manifested the gigantic form for their understanding.
Maitreya said, "You may now hear from me how the Supreme Lord separated himself into the diverse forms of the demigods after the manifestation of the gigantic universal form."
I know some people have a little bit of issue with the word demigod here. I've seen that in their comments, where some people feel like it's almost like a downgrade to some of the other Hindu gods. So I just want to bring that up.
What do is there a suggestion of what to use instead?
I don't know. Somebody in the comments talked to us about that. I remember reading that.
Yeah.
So maybe that's not true and I'm not correct about that. But if somebody wants to educate us a little in the comments, I'd like to know.
Mm.
Okay. I'm on text
12.
12. Agni, or heat, separated from his mouth, and all the directions of material affairs entered into it in their respective positions.
And all the
By the
directors.
What's that?
And all the directors of material affairs.
Oh, all the directors. There we go. Let me say that again. Agni, or heat, separated from his mouth, and all the directors of material affairs entered into it in their respective positions. By that energy, the living entity expresses himself in words. It's like the sound being like Om, being like
Mhm.
the vibration that starts the creation.
When the palette of the gigantic form
Mm.
was separately manifested, Varuna, the director of air in the planetary systems, entered therein, and thus the living entity has the facility to taste everything with his tongue.
Okay.
This is
When the
like
Lord,
coming back to that time when it talked about all
yes,
of this, why we have the tongue, who
yeah,
directs the tongue, all of that.
right, right. When the Lord's two nostrils separately manifested themselves, the dual Asvini Kumaras entered them in their proper positions. And because of this, the living entities can smell the aromas of everything.
Thereafter, the two eyes of the gigantic form of the Lord were separately manifested. The sun, the director of light, entered them with a partial representation of eyesight, and thus the living entity can have visions of forms.
When there was a manifestation of skin separated from the gigantic form, Anila, the deity directing the wind, entered with partial touch, and thus the living entities can realize tactile knowledge.
When the ears of the gigantic form became manifested, all the controlling deities of the directions entered into them with the hearing principles, by which all the living entities hear and take advantage of sound.
When there was a separate manifestation of skin, the controlling deities of sensations and their different parts entered into it. And thus the living entities feel itching and happiness due
Mm.
to touch. Wow, that's so cool. I love that. It's so interesting. Itching
What?
and happiness.
Yeah. When the genitals of the gigantic form separately became manifest, when Prajapati, the original living creature, entered into them with his partial semen, and thus the living entities can enjoy sex pleasure.
The evacuating channel separately became manifest, and the director named Mitra entered into it with the partial organs of evacuation. Thus, the living entities are able to pass stool and urine.
Thereafter, when the hands of the gigantic form separately became manifested, Indra, the ruler of the heavenly planets, entered into them, and thus the living entity is able to transact business for his livelihood.
I love that part. We've talked about that before about like
The
the hand
hands, yeah.
being like the tool of like work and like
Yeah.
business. I love that. So it's
Which,
like the
yeah,
hand
it's
shows
so.
up and it's like action happens.
Yep. Wow.
Okay, where are we at? Text
Text
22.
22. Yep.
Thereafter, the legs of the gigantic form separately became manifest, and the demigod named Vishnu, not the personality of Godhead, entered with partial movement. This helps the living entity move to his destination. Yeah, this is where I'm talking about like Vishnu being named a demigod. This is where
Right.
I bring up like, okay, the translation slightly
Right.
skewed toward this idea that Krishna is somehow above Vishnu. This is where my mind struggles to kind of put it all together in the sense of like
Yeah.
Krishna is Vishnu, is like Brahma, like everything's together.
Right.
Yeah, the mind is just like,
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, text 23. When the
yeah.
intelligence of the gigantic form separately became manifest, Brahma, the lord of the Vedas, entered into it with the partial power of understanding, and thus an object of understanding is experienced by the living entities.
After that, the heart of the gigantic form separately manifested itself. Wow. And and into it entered the moon demigod with partial mental activity. Thus, the living entity can conduct his mental speculations. That's really
Oh,
interesting.
with the
Heart
heart,
itself and the moon enters into it. Very interesting. Like the moon representing our emotions, our feelings,
I
entering into the
suppose.
heart. Wow.
Thereafter, the materialistic ego of the gigantic form separately manifested itself, and into it entered Rudra, the controller of false ego, with his own partial activities, by which the living entity transacts his objective actions.
Can we talk about this word false ego for a second here?
Sure.
Is that just referring to like our game character, kind of what we've been calling like our avatar, like our basically I think I'm Shannon.
The
You think
controller,
you're
the
Ray.
false ego. Yeah,
It's
yeah,
that it
yeah.
seems like
We're
that.
separate. It's the separateness, right?
Yeah, right.
The I versus us versus we versus I. I am I everywhere. Anyhow, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Really, if that makes any
Right.
sense at all. Okay,
Yeah,
text.
kind of going back to that idea of trying to struggle, like what is our existence? We're just a fractal manifestation of that divine
Right.
energy. So I feel like I'm separate. I feel like I'm not that, but I am that.
And that's where like transcendentalism just is so appealing because it just
Yeah,
makes I just feel like that just simplifies it a little bit, where it's like, okay, we are all one. We are all God. We are all the same.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Text 26. Thereafter, when his consciousness separately manifested itself, the total energy, Mahat Tattva, entered with his conscious part. Thus, the living entity is able to conceive specific knowledge.
Mm. Thereafter, from the head of the gigantic form, the heavenly planets were manifested, and from his legs, the earthly planets, and from his abdomen, the sky separately manifested themselves. Within them, the demigods and others also were manifested in terms of the modes of material nature.
The demigods, qualified by the super excellent quality of the mode of goodness, are situated in the heavenly planets, whereas the human beings, because of their nature in the mode of passion, live on the earth in company with their subordinates. Who's that? Like animals?
I don't
Who's
know.
probably the subordinates of the living entities?
Well, oh yeah, I yeah.
Maybe
The
animals?
animals. I was just thinking though, right before you read that, just about how, okay, this is how the living entities were made, but what about things like this chair or like this desk? Like obviously they don't have a tongue, they don't have
Yeah.
organs, they don't have. So I is this just a creation from us? Like because we have hands, we're able to manifest these objects, I suppose. But it almost feels like these types of things would also be considered our subordinates, that maybe they don't have a pure spirit soul. I don't know. Do they? I don't know.
No, that's a great point. Maybe it's just the if everything is stemming from the consciousness of Krishna,
Yeah.
then everything, even the things that we call inanimate, are
Yeah.
actually part of his essence. So, in that sense, yeah, maybe you're right. It's the objects, it's the things we interact with in our world. Maybe that. I don't know. I'd love to hear
Maybe.
people's thoughts. Okay, let's go to text 29. Living entities who are associates. Am I in the right spot?
Yep.
Okay. Living entities who are associates of Rudra develop in the third mode of material nature or ignorance. They are situated in the sky between the earthly planets and the heavenly planets.
And I just want to go back and what was Rudra? Where did Rudra come in? I know that we just said the false ego. False
The false
ego.
ego. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so living entities who are associates of the false ego
Yeah.
develop in the third mode of material nature or ignorance. They're
Or ignorant
situated,
or ignorance. Yeah. 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 Okay.
yeah, situated in the sky between the earthly planets and the heavenly planets. That's
Yeah.
interesting that they get that spot.
Yeah.
Anyhow, text 30. O chief of the Kuru dynasty, the Vedic wisdom became manifested from the mouth of the Virat, the gigantic form. Those who are inclined to this Vedic knowledge are called Brahmins, and they are the natural teachers and spiritual masters of all the orders of society.
Yeah. Thereafter, the power of protection was generated from the arms of the gigantic Virat form. And in relation to such power, the Satriyas also became into existence by following the Satriya principle of protecting society from the disturbance of thieves and miscreants.
Mm.
Okay.
The means of livelihood of all persons, namely production of grain and their distribution to the prajas, was generated from the thighs of the Lord's gigantic form. The mercantile men, did I say that? Yeah, mercantile men,
Yeah.
who take charge of such can't even talk. Executions are called vasyas. Can I read that
Okay.
again?
Yeah.
Just for my own. The means of livelihood of all persons, namely production of grains and their distributions to the prajas, was generated from the thighs of the Lord's gigantic form. The mercantile men who take charge of such execution are called vasyas.
Okay. Thereafter, service was manifested from the legs of the personality of Godhead for the sake of perfecting the religious function. Situated on the legs are the Sudras who satisfy the Lord by service.
Hmm.
So
All
it's like
these
everybody's different roles.
Yes, all these different social divisions are born with their occupational duties and living conditions from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Thus, for unconditional life and self realization, one has to worship the Supreme Lord under the direction of the spiritual master.
O Vidura, who can estimate or measure the transcendental time, work, and potency of the gigantic form manifested by the internal potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead? Yeah, good question.
In spite of my inability, whatever I have been able to hear from the spiritual master and whatever I could assimilate, I am now describing in glorification of the Lord by pure speech, for otherwise my power of speaking would remain unchaste.
Mm. The highest perfectional gain of humanity is to engage in discussions of the activities and glories of the pious actor. Such activities are so nicely arranged in writing by the greatly learned sages that the actual purpose of the ear is served just by being near them. It's like the purpose of our ear is to learn the Vedas, is to learn the knowledge. Wow, I love that. The highest gain of humanity is to engage in discussions of the activities and glories of the pious actor. Wow, that's amazing. I love that sentence.
Oh, my son, the original poet, Brahma, after mature meditation for 1,000 celestial years, could know only that the glories of the Supreme Soul are inconceivable.
Oh, so this is why we can't even feel bad because Brahma thought about it for 1,000 celestial years and couldn't,
Yeah,
still felt it was inconceivable.
yeah.
The wonderful potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is bewildering, even to the jugglers. The jugglers of what? Knowledge?
Yeah.
The potential that potential power is unknown even to the self sufficient Lord. So it is certainly unknown to others.
All right.
Yeah.
Words, mind, and ego, with their respective controlling demigods, have failed to achieve success in knowing the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, we simply have to offer our respectful obeisances unto him as a matter of sanity.
As a matter of sanity. I love it. It's like,
Thus ending Third Canto, Chapter
otherwise
6 of
you're
the
going
Srimad
nuts
Bhagavatam.
trying to figure out what is this. So to keep
It's
your
so true.
sanity, you just like,
It's so
thank you.
true.
Thank you,
And I
Krishna.
and I really think I don't want to go on to the next chapter because I think when we read the double chapters, sometimes like I need to go back and reread that again.
Yeah.
And like really let that digest. Sometimes it does feel necessary to do the two, but since
Yeah.
we're beginning this marathon, I'd like to do one chapter at a time to just allow it to be the knowledge to be digested and within
Yeah, no,
through
let's
my
talk
ears
about it
and
a
all
little
my
bit.
sense organs.
I agree. I don't
Oh,
want to, I want to really kind of try to sink in as much as I even can
yeah,
imagine what does this all mean.
yeah.
So I will just wonder to myself out loud. We read Canto 2.
Mm-hmm.
It really talked about all this already. So here we are in the third canto, and they're still talking about it. They're still really discussing what is this? the gigantic manifestation and how it's coming to pass. So it almost seems like there's like layers of knowledge here that are
Yeah.
trying to be conveyed to us.
Yeah.
So we're hearing it over and over in different ways, different language, different rishis, different, people trying to explain to us what it is. And even just this last part about even Brahma can't really comprehend it. So all you can
Yeah.
do is just trust.
Yeah.
And I go back to sort of at the beginning when I was saying, like, I'm in this state of absolute trust right now, where it's like nothing seems solid around me. And all I can do is just trust that I'm on the path that I'm supposed to be on and not worry about expectation. So in some ways, what we're reading here about all this highest level of creation over our reality, it's like, wow, this is so big. All I can do is like be present.
Yeah.
That's it. Just be
Yeah.
present in the moment, because you can't really function almost in your daily when you're so like up in the universe, up in the clouds, kind of imagining like, what is
Well,
this?
it's true, and it says to us in there that we were given certain jobs to come down here and
Yeah,
complete.
yeah,
And I
yeah.
was I was just listening to something yesterday that was saying like sometimes we hold people in high esteem, like the person who really is like getting stuff done, is the worldwide speaker, and but who's to say the person who just has the 9 to 5 job isn't also just like fulfilling their dharmic karma or whatever. Like I really
Yes,
think that to be true, and it just saying that in there, how, people were born for different things. I just think that that is such a that like consoles my soul and makes me know, like yes, we are all in the exact spots that we're supposed to be in, whether it's everything's beneficial for us, so we can't win or lose. I
yeah.
always I always think of that too. But then coming back to that state of surrender and just for our own literal sanity, seeing the God in everything, seeing Krishna in everything and the creation in everything, for our own sanity, I think that's so needed in this world.
So
I think
needed.
that's the thing, that's probably the one thing that keeps me most sane, is just knowing that there's divinity in everything and that it's all working in this divine orchestra or divine play. I mean, the pious actor, I loved that phrase. The
So good.
highest the highest perfectional gain of humanity is to engage in discussions of the activities and glories of the pious actor.
I love it. I love it. I have been, watching the Mahabharata. I found another version. I've just been watching everything on it I can because um I want to know all the stories. But
Yeah,
at the very beginning, there's the story of the goddess Ganga and Shantanu. Basically, like she has 7 sons that she throws into the river upon their birth, and then upon the 8th son, he says, "Hey, stop! Why are you doing this?" But then the story comes out that actually, what she's doing is she's releasing these divine rishis that
yeah,
had been cursed to come to Earth and have human bodies. And in her compassion, she said, "As soon as you're born, I'll end your life."
yeah,
Um, and it seemed awful and barbaric to those watching, but there was a higher purpose.
right,
And so when I see a story like that, I'm like, wow, we can't really even know. You know what I mean? It's almost like I can't even really know all of the events that led my soul to this place
right.
where I'm having to just trust that Ganga is throwing the babies
Ugh.
in and it's for a purpose. You know what I'm saying? And
And
it's
there's
like,
so many this is like simultaneously a blink of the eye and also like the slowest story that we get to see is our own life. And
so
just
true.
how I just been pondering about how one thing can happen when you're 5 that sets up the thing that happens when you're 90. And like
Yeah,
how that's how quick our life really is. That thing that happened when you
right.
were 5, yeah, there was 90, 85 years in between there that might have felt like it took a long time to get there, but in the celestial timing of it all and the divine timing of it all, no, it's a blink of the eye.
It's nothing. It's like, snap, here I am, 54. And
Yeah.
I'm in yet another beginning of my story. And it's like, wait, it took a long time to get here, but actually for my soul, it was like, zip, here I am.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
same with you. It's like we just keep coming back and back and like picking up. Krishna explains in the Gita, we pick up where we left off.
Yep. Yep.
So here we are in our understanding of all of this. All I can know is that somewhere my higher soul has me on a path, the super soul, the pious actor, the supreme enjoyer.
And you know what I want to say to that? I want to say, in spite of my inability, whatever I have been able to hear and whatever I could assimilate, I am now describing the glorification of the Lord by pure speech. For otherwise, my
Yeah.
power of speaking would remain unchaste. Like
I,
that text right there. In spite of my inability,
yeah,
none of us could, none of us can even wrap our
right.
brains around this, no matter how.
Yeah. It's like when Kuti says, like, again and again, I'll do it again and again.
Yep.
Just be able to get to experience you, you know? It feels like we wouldn't pick some of the trials. It feels like, oh, why would I ever sign up for that? That sounds horrible. But actually, no, this is for us. Everything is for us. Every single moment, every experience is for us.
Yeah.
And how, when you can get into that flow, it's blissful. It truly is blissful. And this just reminds me of that possible state. And just listening to Vidura and Maitreya discuss this, and the fact that I know what they said thousands of years later, it's like, what? just that is happening right now is a little bit mind-blowing. Yeah.
I mean,
Like,
and here, such activities are so nicely arranged in writing by the
so
great and
nicely
learned
arranged.
sage
Seriously. Ugh,
that the actual purpose of the ear is served by being near them.
so good. So good.
I
Hi.
cannot. This is so good. This
Yeah,
is
I'm
so
so
good.
grateful.
And this is why you should read every day. I'm reminded of
Yeah.
that every time I do read. I'm like, okay, yeah, we should be reading this every day. If not for just this, just the remembrance of everything is divine, just the remembrance of what were these organs literally built for us to do?
Right? Listen to truth.
Yeah. And
Oh,
speak truth. And in
yeah.
and despite me not being able to really comprehend it, using my words
Mm.
to communicate what can be assimilated to me. It's so good. It's wildly good. And it's so hard to describe to people who aren't at a certain point, maybe, or maybe that's not even the right phrasing, but this is so life-changing. I mean, even just this one chapter, and we have so much more to read. I can only imagine. And I think the reason that things are being repeated is because these are such high concepts. And like I need to hear them again and again. And so I'm really interested to see how this pattern like plays out throughout the rest of the cantos. Like how much of this are we going to hear again and again, and how much of it is going to be like new,
Yeah, I
new.
agree. I
It's all
agree.
new. And it's
It's
all the
so hard to
same,
understand,
and it's all the same at the same time. So,
for sure.
yeah.
Okay, well, let's wrap this one up
Yeah.
and pick it up tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
We're going to pick it up tomorrow morning. Srimad Bhagavatam. We'll be starting chapter 7, Further Inquiries by Vidura.
Can't wait.
I can't wait. He has such good questions. Ugh, everything is so good. Hey, well, thank you for this
Hare
time
Krishna.
you've spent with us. We appreciate you. Thank you, Shay, for spending this time with me. And it's just
Likewise.
a blessing to be with you every single moment. So
I feel the same.
thank you so much. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna until tomorrow.
See you next time.
Bye.